After playing through the colossal letdown that was the newly released Amnesia Rebirth, I decided to go back to the roots of the franchise with Amnesia: The Dark Descent, the game that launched the career of the one YouTuber who set in stone and motion the way gaming on YouTube is perceived to this day. Relentless young men and women who scream alone in the rooms with pixelated characters. Hello everyone, my name is James, and today I wanted to do a bit of an analysis on what I feel personally is one of the greatest first-person horror games ever created. The Dark Descent was created by an indie developer known as Frictional Games, a small studio founded in 2007 in Sweden by two people, Thomas Grip and Jens Nilsson. They would develop 3 games before The Dark Descent came out, the 3 Penumbra games, which I remember quite fondly for their well-written story, fun as heck puzzles, and great survival horror mechanics for that time. But with their new game Amnesia, it's what put them on the radar, since you know how the saying goes, one Swedish man helping another makes 2 Swedish men. That is an actual saying that I didn't just make up. The Dark Descent released on the 8th of September 2010 and did very well, generating them over $3 million after 2 years. That is pretty remarkable for an indie team in 2010, especially with how well indie games can do today. I spent all of my day yesterday, which when this video releases could be 2 or 3 days later, sometimes 4 or 5 knowing me, but I finished it in one sitting, taking me about 5 to 6 hours, and boy oh boy do I love this game. If not for the intense atmosphere, the hide and seek survival horror sections, the goddamn puzzles, man, I swear to God, there are very few horror games that I enjoy doing puzzles in this much. You just feel like some Sherlock Holmes-esque dude after. The story too just comes together really great. The game just does everything it tries to do really well, and it really does show, seeing as how the game had a 3-year development cycle, if I'm not incorrect, with a bunch of problems through it and barriers that Frictional Games got over. With all these factors taken into account, let's have a deeper dive into each one and talk about them since we can. So sit back, my friends, this should be a good one. So let's start with the story, seeing as how that seems to be the easiest thing to go about discussing. The game has you take on the role of protagonist from Mayfair, Daniel, and you wake up with not a single memory of what has happened to you. It seems you are suffering from amnesia. Haha, I like that. Very nice-oo. You play the entire game in the Brennenburg Castle, located somewhere in Prussia, and this castle holds some dark secrets that you will find out. As you progress through the game, and in case you didn't know, I am going to be spoiling the game. This is your only warning I'm giving, since you might want to play it and not want the story spoiled. Okay, I'm assuming you were still watching because you were okay with spoilers, so I shall continue. As you progress through the game, you uncover your memory through a series of flashbacks and notes and diary entries, and boy oh boy, are you playing quite the evil man. Daniel finds a mysterious orb somewhere in Algeria, and yes, both this game and the newly released Rebirth do have some connections. This orb, when brought to any expert, seems to be somewhat cursed, as all experts Daniel shows the orb to end up dying horrifically. It's pretty bad. It turns out a strange, very aggressive entity known as the Shadow is to blame for all these deaths, as it is not happy the orb is taken, I would assume. Daniel turns to the Baron, Alexander, who resides in Brennenburg Castle, and offers his help and tells Daniel that he can help him through the power of Vitae, a strange substance that Daniel has no idea what it is, but he's okay going in and finding out. Now, Vitae, if you didn't know, is harvested from the excessive stress of living creatures, and torturing humans is one of Alexander's main ways of inducing stress, and he very so easily convinces Daniel to join in because he tells him that all victims that they torture are criminals. Alexander has innocent people kidnapped and then has Daniel torture them to a point where they must take an amnesia potion to forget, and the cycle then repeats like every Friday night. It is quite horrifying and is, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons I was able to feel dread in this game, since it's actually horrible what's going on. You really do learn a lot about torture items with this game, some I wish I never found out about. It turns out Alexander actually belongs to some other cosmic realm, and he just wants to return there since he was banished, and Daniel, having gone too far by killing a young girl at some point, wants to seek revenge and stop Alexander, feeling used and abused. He drinks an amnesia potion and our story begins. That is a vague breakdown of what happens, but I feel it's enough to help understand the bare bones. The flashbacks don't come too heavy in this game. There is plenty of time in between them, and they don't appear enough to make me want to start falling asleep. They're usually vague but descriptive enough to help me understand one more extra point. The notes are done extremely well too. You always know there is a certain amount in one area, and they aren't usually too hard to find. They also really help to piece together the story more, and by the end of it, I did fully understand what was going on. Now, I was left with some extra questions, but maybe I missed some notes and other stuff. I'm not entirely sure what the servants are. I would have liked to know more about Dior, but obviously we have Rebirth for that now. More information on some main characters like Agrippa or Johannes Myers. I think that is their name. Overall though, it's a pretty tight story. You visit all the places in the castle that serve as major significance to the story, and I really do think it's pieced together well, with the story starting at simple unknown fear and leading to actual involvement of cosmic horror. The heck is that? It's a floating naked spaceman. I like the story though. A lot of games struggle to tell a story through notes since they could be too long. There may be too many, there is a lot of factors, but I feel the Dark Descent does it quite right. Now, the gameplay is extremely simple. You walk around, you crouch around, you open doors around, you pick up things around, and you carry a lantern around. You do have an inventory, but you won't ever fill it entirely. I never have, but I've only ever played on normal. By the time this video is out, I will have played the game on the hard mode to at least try it out. Whether I finish it or not remains to be seen. I'm not writing this script all at once since there's a lot of information to compile, and I like to know what I'm going to be reading out before I do it. So the game will take you through multiple sections in one big semi-linear adventure, with there always being a straight path, but to get there, it's not always so straightforward. The gameplay throughout each of these levels has you collecting notes and diary entries, solving puzzles through interacting with the world's physics, and hiding and running from enemies you stumble upon. There is no means of combat in this game, or defense if you count throwing a rock at someone's head. This game relies heavily on its physics engine, with you being able to pick up just about any object and move it around, throw it or put it into some specific slot. You will fix up an elevator, you will create tonics, you will open doors, a lot of doors. The ability to move cogwheels into places, to pull levers down, they all help you immerse into this world, since that little bit of motion behind the player's controller or mouse and keyboard goes a long way in helping you to feel like there's a bit more effort going into what you're doing. The encounters with the enemies themselves can be fun, but for me it's definitely not one of the highlights of the game. Since maybe it was just this specific playthrough, but the servants would tend to glitch out, and if you know how they work, they aren't as scary as you would think. After a while of being in an area, they tend to disappear, and you always know it's safe by the music cues. As much as I love music and sounds, letting me know exactly when an area is safe to stumble around in really doesn't make it any scarier for me, since all I have to do is wait in some corner or hide behind some boxes. The game is punishing, with enemies killing you quite fast if they get you, and you having a health meter of sort in the inventory screen. Another interesting mechanic is Daniel's sanity. This is altered by Daniel's interactions with enemies, spooky events, being in the dark too long, and gets better as he progresses the game. It can be very annoying at times, with the lowest form of sanity having you move through areas a bit slower, the string gets all wavy and disorientated, and your ability to look around with the camera becoming delayed and sluggish. There are times where I was stuck in the view for maybe 10 minutes, and it really does bug you. Also, every single time a flashback comes into screen, I thought I was about to be blinded. I'm playing the game in a dark room, so having a blinding white light definitely doesn't help. However, if you are new to the game, you never know when the servant will appear, and you are given quite a small window of time to quickly decide where to hide, how to hide, and what you should do next. This makes for some extremely interesting survival horror gameplay, since nowhere is safe. Enemies can literally break down the doors to any room you hide in. They are strong boys. You have light in the form of tinder boxes, which are located all around the game, and they can be used to light candles, lanterns, and just about any sort of external light source. You also have your trusty lantern, which I mentioned earlier, and that can be refilled with oil you find throughout the game, and unlike Rebirth, it does last quite a while if you flow through the game quite fast. After 2 or 3 playthroughs, you will have the game down and the scare factor will disappear, but them 2 or 3 playthroughs will be fun, and you also have the hard mode to try and play on. There is 3 different endings to the game, and the one with Agrippa's head has you creating a whole tonic, which adds a bit more to it, so I always push people to do stuff with extra content. I do like the gameplay. It's simple, it integrates nicely with the game itself, but Frictional Games' way of doing hide and seek has not changed in 10 years, and it definitely has its weaknesses. So puzzles are technically part of the gameplay, but I wanted to talk about them a bit more in depth, since they play such a huge role in this game and are far superior to any of the ones you will come across in Amnesia Rebirth. So with what I mentioned earlier about the game's physics, they are everything when it comes to the puzzles. You might have to match up levers in one room like the ones in another. You will have to collect ingredients in different rooms, then boil each one and put them together to make an acidic liquid. You might have to pull rocks and wood away from a door to open it. It can go from simple to quite extreme. The fact that you walk into a big room and there are multiple smaller rooms, which when all cleared allow you to progress onto the next big room, really suits what I like in a horror game. I feel like everything is connected and I'm solving not just multiple smaller puzzles, but one giant puzzle. It feels great and I always feel so very satisfied when I finish doing it. I felt great when I solved the puzzles in the cistern. I felt great when I fixed the elevator. It felt amazing when I got to grip his head off and put the orb together. There is no better way of judging a game than to be able to tell yourself if it felt rewarding or not. You play games to have fun, but also to sometimes challenge yourself and to almost always reward yourself. Most people I know love puzzles, and solving things brings about that amazing feeling in a human where they feel so satisfied after. The Dark Descent contains so much of that, and you always know you've done well when you see that blue light take over your screen for a couple of seconds, informing you of your success in that specific puzzle and part. If you don't like horror and are not scared of it, so be it. I would implore you play the game for the satisfaction of fixing things and solving the puzzles. That reason and that reason alone is enough for me to warrant buying the game. I just only wish so much that Amnesia Rebirth had more of that feeling. Let's talk a bit about the atmosphere, the feeling of the castle and levels, and even have a talk about the sound design and music. The castle is huge and feels extremely empty. In horror, it is very hard to go wrong with a big creepy castle. They are almost always mysterious in some way. I swear you, is it even a castle if there isn't secret passages? You can feel Daniel's worry as you progress through the game, with the first half being much more unsettling than the second half. The first few sections will have you hearing random footsteps around you, hear things falling, see doors opening randomly. The castle itself will even crumble in parts. As great as the lantern and tinderboxes are, it's always so dark in front of you, and when you have that lantern equipped, you only have a couple of feet in front of your field of view for you to judge for yourself what you might encounter, and it really adds to it. Are you about to walk into a grunt? Is there some safe door in front of me? Am I about to be offered a new creature to engage? The game has you asking these questions at all times. The distant groans of the servants and grunts will drive you nuts and trying to figure out should you hide or should you push forward. Sometimes you can hear the chains wrapped around their bodies rattling, yet they don't appear anywhere near you. This unpredictability is amazing. I love it. It always has me in such edges and proves that you do not need cheap jump scares to scare the crap out of someone. I can count all the jump scares on both hands in this game. That's how little there is, and in comparison to Amnesia Rebirth, that is quite amazing. I never expected Frictional Games to go down the route of cheap jump scares. The music can go from undeniably eerie to chirpy and refreshing. Every note you pick up has some form of calming cue. Whilst encountering a servant, well, you will always know when shit's about to go down. Music is so important in a video game. With horror, sound is even more important. The Dark Descent gets sound perfect, and its music too. I'd advise listening to the soundtrack alone in the dark, and you will see what I mean. But this castle is unsettling. This game is unsettling. I feel dread, I feel anticipation, I feel horror. That is what horror is supposed to feel like, not cheap jump scares. I can sucker punch anyone I come across in the balls, they will always react the same. The same goes for jump scares, they are unnecessary. Now, I could also talk about the custom stories, but I decided to settle for the DLC you get with the game. It's called Justine, and it is just as fun as the base game. You play through this DLC doing a set amount of challenges given to you by some mysterious woman who all you get to hear from her is her wonderful voice. The challenges are 3 people captured throughout the areas that you can save or let die. I did do all 3 endings. You can see in my achievements on Steam if you add me at StraightUpIrish, because I am the coolest person ever when it comes to achievements. The DLC has the same gameplay for you, bar the lantern, although I can see why it wasn't needed. You can finish this DLC taking your time in less than 40 minutes. Like, I scoured every node and tinderbox and it still took less than 40 minutes. The monster you see in the DLC is scary enough. It's very similar to the grunts in Dark Descent with them playing the exact same way. However, there is this one part where you have to turn levers and wheels to open doors whilst getting away from the monster, and that was pretty intense. The story itself is pretty cool. There is a bit of a twist at the end, so I won't spoil that on you. Honestly, I'd say just do it yourself. It's short enough, but it's alright. The puzzles are also incredibly simple. I did use a guide to figure out the slides because I just wasn't arsed deciding which one goes where because I just wanted to get it over with. Overall, I'm glad I got it with the game itself. It didn't make me feel some spectacular rise and love for the game. It was just okay in my opinion. The custom stories are fantastic though. Some of them are next level good, and I heavily advise trying some because there is so much content with them. I love this game. I hope that is obvious, but with all these different elements analysed and taken into account, I would heavily advise playing it since it isn't difficult to get a copy of, and in my opinion, I think it's worth the $20 price tag. This is a horror game that has aged well, and it's worth the money for the quality of content you are getting, and it's a memorable adventure. The story is good crack, the gameplay is fun and suitable for the style of game, the enemies are interesting and terrifying, every new room has something fresh and you will feel dread and fear. This game makes me shit myself, even after playing it for like the 50th time. I highly advise giving it a shot if you haven't ever since October is the perfect time to do it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like or dislike and let me know in the comments below what you thought. Did you like the game? Do you think it's a good suitable horror game? Also consider becoming a patron of the channel too, since I'd love to keep this up full time and give you informative videos like this where we talk about games we all respect and like. I do appreciate all the support you guys and gals give me, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll hopefully see you in the next video. See ya!